You've tamed the voices in your head. You've put your courage to the test. Laid all your doubts to rest.
Hi everyone, welcome from your Intuition Queen to a new episode of Intuitive Queens podcast. And today I have the pleasure to have with me Emily Davis, who is a natural intuitive author and magic maker. We need some magic over here. Hi Emily, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy for you to be here. Thank you for accepting to be on my show.
Absolutely.
I love that you're a magic maker.
Thank you. I believe we're all magic makers.
Yeah, I agree. Before we get into what you do and everything, I'd like for you to tell us your story, because I know you have a very painful but interesting story, which led you to where you are right now. So I'd love for you to share it with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So my story is very multifaceted. There's a whole lot of components to it, but I'll start from when I was really little. So essentially what I do now and what I stand for in life is that we all have our own intuitive and magical abilities and gifts. Kind of like superpowers, but more along the lines of like, every psychic you ever seen or every medium, right? We all have our own intuitive spiritual power, and we just need to tap into it. So I was blessed and cursed to know of a lot of my spiritual gifts from a very, very young age. Um, like very, very young. I remember being like 5 or 6 and like feeling weird things and seeing weird things and not understanding it. And I went to my mom and was like, Mom, this thing is happening. And of course I'm like 6, so like I'm sure I explained it horribly, on top of everything else. I'm sure like it was weird, and then I also didn't explain it well.
Well, what
But she
kind
was
of
like,
things were you listening, hearing, feeling like? Because it sounds like no more different from what you normally feel as a child.
yeah, for sure. I remember one of the biggest things I would do is I would feel other people's energy. So like it wasn't even just it wasn't like emotions necessarily how you think of like an empath where you absorb their emotions and feel them yourself. I'm a very clairsentient person. Clairsentience is where you feel other people's feelings within your own physical body.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so whether they're in pain or whether they're feeling angry or whatever it is, I
Right.
would feel their energy manifest within my physical being. And that would cause problems because I would like all of a sudden walk into a room and one person would be angry in the corner and I'd feel like this flush of intense
Wow.
like throughout my body. And I'd be a little kid, so like I wouldn't understand. I'd just be like,
Mm.
wow, all of a sudden I feel all of this different things. And like there would be times too, I'd be like sitting on the couch and my legs would like jolt out really fast because someone else's energy was like going through me, and I would be like, ow, like that hurt, like what is going on? I don't understand. So that was like a big part of it. And then I was also seeing and hearing things that weren't necessarily there, right? So what I know now is I was seeing and hearing guides, my
Right.
guides, other people's guides, and that's what I actively do all the time is I channel people's guides for them, because that's one of my clearest gifts that I have.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time I was just like, there is a like things in my room and they talk to me and I don't know what to even describe what they look like, like they just are there. I kind of see them, I hear them for sure, and I don't know what to tell you they look like, Mom. And she was
I
just
can imagine your mom being like, she's crazy.
right. And my mom is like a super devout Catholic. She's a sweet, wonderful human being, but like that is not in her realm. Like she was
Yeah.
just like, all right, go play. Like go outside. Like you're fine. And I remember being like, okay, that was the first time I realized that what I was experiencing wasn't normal.
Mm.
I thought up until then, because I was a kid, you think everything you go through is normal, like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's no differentiation between like weird and not weird. Like you're just thinking that you're just existing and everyone else is too. And that was one of the first times I realized like, oh, I'm weird. That's great.
Mm.
Like I can't talk about this. People don't understand me. So that was like kind of the first, I call it one of the first times my gifts kind of started to get blocked, because what blocks our gifts is the trauma of life and the yuck of life, and the different energy blocks that we've put on ourselves, or emotional blocks that are holding us back, and that blocks our magical gifts too. So that was the first time I kind of started putting layers on top of
Mm.
those gifts to shove them down. That being said, and like throughout high school I did try to access them. Still, I used them the only way I knew how at the time, because I wasn't really educated and I didn't feel like I could talk about it. So I would like read tarot for people, like very,
Mm.
very base level. I was still very actively feeling and seeing guides. I just wasn't talking about it. There was actually a period of time And this is really funny because I was literally a senior in high school, and I was like working full time and going to school, and I had all my shit together, but I had my mom sleep with me in bed most nights because I was so afraid of the things that were coming to talk to me, which I
Wow.
wasn't telling her that necessarily. I was just like, hey, do you want to like come have a sleepover in my room, mom? And she'd be like, I guess, like, okay, sure, whatever you need, hun. And she was so sweet to oblige, but really I was like seeing things, or feeling
Mm.
things there. Specifically
And
like a
at that
couple of my
point, you were still afraid, or you were still afraid because did you realize at that point they were guides, or you were still kind of like, what is this?
I was still kind of afraid. Like
Mm.
none of them had ever hurt me, so I wasn't afraid of them hurting me, but it
Yeah.
was more, I don't know what you are.
Mm.
I don't know if I'm just crazy at this point or if you coming from a different place, and I don't know what your intentions are. Like, no, you haven't hurt me, but like, could you hurt me? Like, is that even a
Mm.
possibility? I remember like watching I think it was Sylvia Brown or something on one of those like daytime talk shows or whatever, like way back when. And I was in like my middle school or high school, and she was talking about how there was like a potential of ghosts to hurt you, which I don't think there really is, necessarily, because yeah, like severely. Anyway, so I remember like anytime there'd be someone in my room, someone or something in my room, I'd be like, oh my God, it's coming to hurt me, which wasn't accurate at all.
Yeah. I can
But
imagine, especially when you cannot talk to anybody that understands what you're going through. Even just to say to you, look, it's okay, this is happening to you. Don't speak to people that don't understand it, but do this, or, relax, whatever.
right. Exactly. And that's part of the reason I do what I do too, is because like you need validation or you're stuck in this scary darkness, and you'll be overwhelmed with things like anxiety and you won't know where it's
Mm,
coming from. All of a sudden you get panic attacks and you're like, oh my gosh, I must have a panic disorder or whatever. Well, maybe it is just your gifts that you've been suppressing for so long and they're trying to come
mm,
out, but you don't know because you don't know, you've never been able to talk about them or have the tools to really deal with them.
yeah.
So that was like my high school years. And I felt very outside a lot of the time. So I looked for validation and other ways that I could get, because obviously things were going on with me and I couldn't get validation about those things.
Mm,
So one of those things eventually ended up getting me into an abusive relationship, which really, really sucked, right out of high school. And I was with him for about 4.5-ish years, and we got married and we had 2 kids, and he was a horrendous human being, in every sense of the word. And during that time specifically, not only emotionally and mentally was I completely destroyed in all the senses, like I was
yeah.
totally taken down into that abusive cycle, but also my gifts completely shut off entirely because I was so much in fight or flight. There was no space
Yeah.
for that at all. I remember there was one time throughout that entire relationship where something happened, and one of my guides, she's one of my most concrete ones. She's like physically around me all the time, and she can do things like turn on lights, and she does things like that. She's a benevolent guide for me, like she's very specific for me, but she obviously hated my ex. And I saw her smacks like a light bulb off of like a shelf right near him.
Mm,
And I remember being like, I'm just sleep deprived. I have 2 young kids. Like, I'm just tired. And he was like, what is that? Like, he freaked out. And that's like the only time. And it's still an evidence of fight or flight. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Because it's still like based on fear. So it was just like more fear at that
Yeah.
time where I couldn't even see clearly.
But I guess also, and like I had a lot of guests on my podcast coming out of abusive relationship, and I guess it's like you're also afraid of what might happen if you get into that space and you start to become powerful again.
Yeah.
Because obviously, especially when you have kids, you have to think about yourself and them as well. It's not just about you. So I do see why people shut it off. It just kind of like a fear of becoming too powerful also.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's, not only are you not being understood on like a grander scale because no one
Mm,
knows what you're going through in your day to day in your house, but you know that there is going to be no understanding if anything different than the norm happens. Like, even if you're 5 minutes late home from work, there's no understanding there. That is a
mm,
perfectly good reason for him to scream and be abusive and all different stuff. So if you're like, any magical anything comes, that is a no. Like, that is life threatening in your brain,
mm,
because there's literally a tiger in the room that's going to eat your face. Like,
yeah.
it's just what it is. And he was he was physically abusive, but mostly very psychologically abusive and emotionally abusive, and those are always the worst ones because they
Mm.
really make the deepest scars. Like the physical stuff heals really fast, but the other stuff not so much. um and so I eventually escaped that after 4.5 years, um which was a journey in and of itself. And then it took about 6 months for my brain to stop being in constant fight or flight.
Mm.
And I was living like, I was back in my hometown because the classic abuser, he took me 8 hours away where
Of
no one
course,
knew
yeah.
me. You know, so I was back in my hometown where I felt safe. I was living on my own. He was in jail. Like things were good and things were safe. And I remember like, okay, after 6 months, I could like breathe again normally and not
Mm.
think he was going to come in the middle of the night or something like that. And I remember one of the first things I thought was, oh my goodness, like I think my magic's going to come back. Like I think all these gifts that I had as a teenager that were scary at the time were actually good, because if they were bad, they would have happened when I was with him, because everything bad happened when I was with
Yeah,
him. You
that's
know what I
actually a
mean?
good point.
Yeah, right. I was like, so they must have been a good thing. Like I want them to be back. Like I
Mm.
want this to be a thing. And I remember like, yes, this is gonna happen. And then it didn't happen. And I didn't understand why. Like I was
Mm.
so distraught. I waited like probably another 3 or 4 months. I was like, okay, it's just gonna happen gradually. Like I'll just be on the lookout for it. And I tried to feel other people's energies and tried to sense other beings in the room and all this different stuff, and it just didn't happen. And I was so confused and I was so sad. And just was like, I remember saying out loud, like, is he seriously gonna take this from me too?
Mm.
And then that was the moment I was like, no, no, he is not. Like, I am going to figure out how to reawaken this magical parts of me if it fucking kills me. Like, I am going to do this no matter
Wow.
what. And so I did. And so it was a journey. It was like a 2-year journey of me like deeply working through my trauma, because I know fear is one of the biggest blocks that blocks your,
Hmm.
intuitive gifts. And for me, I had fear of basically everything at that point because I
Yeah, I can
didn't believe,
imagine.
I had fear of love. I had fear of not being loved. I had fear, like everything. I had fear that everything I was doing was wrong, like all of that stuff. So I spent so much time working through so much of that and figuring out how to clear out blocks and figuring out how to like sit with my energy again and know my energy. And then eventually, not only did my gifts come back, but they came back in such a big, beautiful, new, real way, where I could learn how to actually use them at will, and they weren't just something that was
Mm.
happening to me. And then on top of that, more came than I ever anticipated. And so now what I do is I've taken that system that I used and I've condensed it and actually help other people do the same thing. And so my
Mm.
business is run entirely, basically intuitively, to help other people run their lives intuitively.
Amazing. I just have one question before we dig into what you do
Yeah.
and who you help.
Hmm.
You said that you tried for 2 years to do energy healing. Were you going to healers to help you out, or were you trying to do that by yourself?
I was going to counseling for a while, and that was mostly just like I just need to. It was really funny because there wasn't even a ton of like clearing at that point. It was just like, let me word vomit everything that happened to me. I just need to say it to somebody. So I did counseling for a while with that, which was really helpful. But it wasn't necessarily super duper healing. It was great for the like catharsis of like releasing,
Mm.
but it wasn't a lot of like active healing stuff
Right.
for me personally. So then I hired a coach, um, and I tried to work, I actually hired a series of coaches, 2 or 3 different coaches, and worked through a couple of their programs. And that was what really started to kind of clear out some of the stuff. But I was realizing, and I was getting into a new relationship kind of at the time too,
Mm.
with my amazing fiance. He's incredible and wonderful and not anything like my ex.
Good.
But yeah, great. But I was having all of the PTSD stuff come up too.
Mm.
And I was like, cool, I can't have my gifts and have all of this PTSD stuff. Like that, those don't compute. Like it doesn't work. And there's not a ton of support out there for women who have been in an abusive relationship and are now trying to date again and are having the
Mm.
PTSD come back. Because there's so much right when you leave, but there's not a lot 3 years down the line.
Mm.
It's just kind of how it works, unfortunately. So eventually I started really digging in myself. I became a theta healer. So I have some theta healing background, to kind of remove programs that way. And then and this is what I wrote about in my book actually, is I started to wonder that if like maybe healing wasn't working for me because it wasn't fun. And
Mm.
I was thinking of it as not something as super fun. Like everyone's narrative was like, healing's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. And like, it's going to be a challenge, but you can make it through, like that sort of thing. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm subconsciously believing that this is going to be another hard thing. And I don't want
You
another
had
hard thing.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so no wonder this isn't fully working. So I ended up actually, I'm a super big nerd in all the ways. And so I ended up applying role play gaming strategy where you like create a character and the character
Mm.
levels up um, to to healing from abuse and healing from anxiety. And that was kind of the game changer for me to really start breaking through some of those blocks that I had. And now that's what I wrote about my book. My book is basically a how-to guide of like
What's
how
the
to
name?
role play.
What's the name of your book?
It's called Damsel No More: The Secret to Slaying Your Anxiety and Loving Again After an Abusive Relationship.
Okay.
And it's coming out in audio. It's already on ebook on Amazon, and then it was picked up by a New York publisher. So it's coming out on audiobook in the next couple months, and then it'll be in like bookstores and libraries, etc. in October.
Okay. But for people that cannot buy it, so you can buy it on Amazon, but you cannot buy okay. So I'll put the link below.
Yeah. So there's no paper copy yet, but it's coming. But so that's what I kind of wrote about in my book. But once my gifts started opening back up after I really kind of cleared out a lot of that
Mm.
I was able to I was downloaded a really awesome system to help people like pull limiting beliefs in a matter of minutes, not a matter of days, and like those sort of things. So that's really what I do now. But yeah, so that was big for me. So it's a kind of a combination of all the different things that I have ever like that you could possibly use. I was like, I'm going to try everything. Um, and then I'm going to do my own thing over here and see if that works too. And that happened to work the best, but it was definitely a group journey as far as all the different things that you
Yeah, well, I can imagine. I mean, like we all have issues and traumas, but when you come out of an abusive relationship, there is a lot that you need to release before you can actually. And probably that's also the reason why your gift were not coming yet, because you
Right.
had to heal some part of yourself before you could actually feel them. But I love the fact that you created role play because that's really creative, and it's amazing that it managed to help you to get them back.
Yeah,
What
thank
made
you.
you, how did you come up with the idea, because it's not straightforward?
No, it's not. I was actually playing Dungeons and Dragons with my kids, and we were playing it all together. And I was really frustrated that day. I'll never forget because I was like really like annoyed because like I think I had an anxiety attack in the morning,
Mm.
um, which just sucks. They're just not fun to have. And I was just like annoyed and exhausted. And I remember like we were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I was like, huh, like when I'm playing this, I'm being a totally different person and everything feels better. And I was like, what if I could make myself into a character and then role play through all my trauma so I didn't have to like deal with it, and it could be something like slaying a dragon instead of like dealing with this fear. And
Mm.
maybe that would make it less scary and less hard to really face that, and like maybe that would really create actual healing. And it did. Like basically
That's amazing.
I created a character of me, and then every time I overcame a fear or did something, I would give the character some gear, and I created like a storyline in my head. I've always been a very like I write fantasy too. None of it's really published, but I just like write it, on my own. And I've always been really artistic, so I was like, this is
Mm.
kind of like right in my alley. This is fun, and I'm enjoying this. And so instead of being another chore that I had to do in
Mm.
order to like be a person again, it was something that was fun. Like I could wake up and like, oh, cool, like I'm gonna go on this quest today, and like it made it fun.
I love it. I think it's amazing. And I see how that helped you, because you went through so much that you don't want every day to have to feel this pain and have to go through, although you know that if
Yeah,
you don't go through it, you can't become yourself.
right.
So that's fantastic. Okay, so what is it? Tell us what you do then, because obviously your story, as painful as it has been, is what made you become who you are and do what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, sorry, I had to clear my throat again.
It's all right.
I basically in my business, what I do is I run a program called Magical Boot Camp, And what it does is in 9 weeks, we deeply awaken your own intuitive gifts. So we get rid of all of that trauma that's blocking them, that's keeping them in,
Mm-hmm.
even if you've never even felt them before. Like some people feel them as children like me, and some people have never really known that they're there. Some people are bothered by them daily and they just don't know what they are. So there's a whole spectrum that you can be on, but every single human being on this earth has their own set of intuitive gifts. Um, it's just a matter of finding where yours are and what they are and then how to use them. So what we do is we really get rid of all the trauma, all of the stuff that's blocking you, everything from your mom telling you were weird when you were 6, like me, or going through an abusive relationship. There's levels of trauma, but it all is trauma,
Mm.
even if it's small. So we really dive in, get through all of that. We do a lot of like guided meditation and things that'll really help you connect with your energy and get to know your energy. And then it's very unique in the fact that instead of like Reiki or something like that, where you go and it's like, these are the 12 steps to learn how to do Reiki and you learn how to do it and you move on. It's, hey, cool, we've cleared this out. Let's connect with your personal gifts, let's wake them up, and then have you do practice sessions on people, on with yourself, like whatever it is. Maybe you talk to animals, whatever it is, like
Mm-hmm.
let's figure it out. We'll do those practice sessions, and then by the end of it, you'll have your own way of using your own gifts. So it's kind of like creating your own modality.
Right. So you work with everybody, or you work specifically with people that have had a trauma and have blocked their gift?
I specifically work with people who want to discover their purpose using their magic and
Right.
want to learn how to use it without fear. Like that is specifically what I do. Most people I work with have gone through some level of deep trauma to some degree, because most of the time you're not on this healing path if you haven't really gone
Mm.
through something like that. And it is essentially healing and self-love and all of that jazz too. But more than anything else, it's people who are like, hey, I know there's something more. I feel this magic.
Mm.
I want to do something with it. I have no idea where to start and I have no idea how to wake it up. And it's like an ache, right? It's like
Mm.
inside
Mm-hmm.
you that you just want to really itch and you can't.
Yeah.
And those are the people that I work with.
Okay. Right. Fantastic. Okay, then. Um, where can we find you if we want to get in touch with you and work with you?
Absolutely. So my website is the same name as my book. So it's damselnomore.com. So on there, you get one free question with me too. So if you just want intuitive guidance from your guides, which is basically what I do, is I channel people's guides. You can ask one free question on there and I will answer that for you. So that's on there as well. So anyone of your listeners is more than welcome to do that. Also, I do have my book available for free on there too. So you guys can go
Mm-hmm.
check that out as well. If you want a copy of my book for free, you're more than welcome to get it there. Just for your show. I love that. So that's on the website. That's also where you can set up a consultation with me, which is like a free hour clarity session where I channel what your gifts are and we figure out if you're a fit for magical boot camp, and we kind of go from there, and it's very fun. So that's all on my website. So damselnomore.com. And then I'm also really active on Instagram. So at Liker of Words.
Okay. So when you talk about gifts, I have another question for you.
Yeah.
Do you mean intuitive gift or anything else? Does it have to be becoming more spiritual, or it can be a different kind of gift?
Um, Kind of. So when I'm talking about gifts specifically, it's connecting with things that are outside of yourself, mostly, is what I'm trying to
Mm,
talk about. So
mm,
when we awaken those intuitive spiritual gifts, it's the way that you perceive the world around you in a way that's uniquely yours. So maybe it's something like energy work, or maybe you're a medical intuitive and you really know how to move energies through people's bodies, or maybe you can see other people's auras really well, or maybe you're just super good at numerology and you can like do numerology with calculations but also like intuitively know it, you know what I mean?
mm,
So
mm-hmm.
there's like such a variety of things. It's not just the classic like fortune teller, psychic, medium, tarot. Like we do cover all those because a lot of people have those gifts and it's
Yeah.
beautiful and amazing, but there's so many different things.
Mm.
There's someone in the program who she channels plant energy.
Wow.
And so yeah, it's really, really cool. So like not only can she like speak to plants and hear their needs, but she can hear the energy of the plant, if it's like what you need in like matches what you need in your body. So she can like
Mm-hmm.
do both sides of that, like, which is like, I don't have a name for that. Like that's just like,
No, exactly. I don't think I have
it's
heard
just her
about
own thing.
it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just your own, it depends, like we wake
Personal.
it up, whatever it is that you've been gifted it with, like we'll wake it up and help you figure out how you want to use it. Maybe you want to
Mm-hmm.
use it in business. That's great. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe you just want to do it so you can keep giving yourself clarity and really tune in. That's fine too. Like it's your decision on how you want to use your gifts.
Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful. And you also have a podcast. Tell us about it. What's the name and what do you talk about in your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my podcast is perfect if you are just kind of just starting out, really getting into like spirituality and metaphysics and on all of this magical, mystical stuff. So if you're like, what is she even talking about when she says gifts, or like, I don't know any channeling plants, like what? It doesn't make any sense. That's basically why we started the podcast. So it's a metaphysical comedy podcast. So it's very funny and easy to listen to, and it's called Perceptionist Anonymous. We're on all the major platforms. And it's me and one of my oldest friends who's just as in tuned as I am, and we definitely were each other's life rafts throughout high school, etc. But we do it together, and we cover everything from all the different types of clairs, so your clairsentience, clairvoyance, all those things, to like what even is astrology. So we like go all over the spectrum and like really give people like an overview of different spiritual stuff.
Oh, amazing, amazing. Well, people just listen to it. And if you want to know more, if you're just starting, that's probably the perfect place for you to go. All right. Okay, so I have just the last thing before we go. For people that have children, maybe, or they're in the situation where they feel the need to shut up their gift for whatever reason,
Yeah.
or parents that might have children that have gift and go to them like you did with your mom, being like, Mom, I see people, or I feel this, I feel that. What would be your advice for them in order to, for the ones that are adult, how to release them and how to make sure that they can feel their gift and use their gift without feeling afraid, and for parents that might not know how to deal with kids?
Yeah. First of all, most kids are in touch with those gifts, whether they come and talk to you about it or not. So like that's like the big one, is like they, to some degree, kids see more and feel more than we
Mm-hmm.
do. And as by the time we're an adult, we often forget that experience that we had as children. But as children, like the veil is much thinner. So if they come to you and they're trying to explain this thing that they're feeling or whatever, and it sounds weird, the first thing is to believe them. Believe that what they're experiencing is exactly what they're experiencing, and they're trying to talk to you, which is a huge amount of trust, because it's already a weird thing. Like it's already something that's out of their sphere that they don't really get. So that's like the biggest first step, is just trust that what they're saying is like actually something that's happening, and then just be there to listen. And if they're saying that they're scared, or if they're saying they're afraid, like ask them what they're afraid of, like want to know more and be engaged with what they are actually afraid of. And then there's other, like you can just do quick research, if they're afraid of, there's someone in their room talking to them, like there's tons of stuff online. There's
Oh
like
yeah.
you can reach out to me if you want to, but like there's so much stuff online about like, you can reassure them that the angels are surrounding them, or like there's so many different like little things that you can do that'll just help shift their experience. And specifically right now, with there's so many like indigo children and crystal children, all the different types of kids that have like so much extra sensory ability,
Yeah.
it's going to be a huge thing. But the best thing you can do for a parent in that as a parent in that situation, is just listen and just do your best to understand. And even if you can't understand, just believe what they're saying, and that's going to go so far. And just reassure them like, hey, this happened, like this is normal, like people are bigger and more magical than we even know of. That's why we like stories of magic, is because it connects us to that feeling.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
it's okay to have that feeling.
Mm.
Yeah.
And for anybody that is like in your situation, that has decided to shut up their gift for
Mhm.
fear, whatever, what would you suggest as the best way to reopen that gate?
Absolutely. Um, the first step is to get to know your own energy. Like, what does your own energy feel like? Because before you can feel other people's energy or the energy of anything else, like you need to understand like your own space. And that's like the first step. There's a ton of like healing and removing of fears, but the first step is to just like sit with your own energy. Like just take 5 minutes a day and just sit in the quiet and just feel how your energy moves, feel your breath, feel it within your body. And that is going to be a huge thing. And then the next step is there is so many things in life that we're afraid of, like so many things. And most of the time when we feel fear on a day-to-day basis, because we all feel it on a day-to-day basis in some capacity, we're not actually understanding what it is we're fearing. We're just reacting to whatever fear emotion is being caused.
So true.
So if we sit down and actually make a list of everything we're afraid of, it's once you read back over that list, you'll be like, okay, like, yeah, being afraid of getting hit by a car is a lot different than being afraid that someone's going to be mad at me. Like, one will kill me, one will not. So then what it does is it teaches your brain to differentiate between the types of fear on a kind of on a scale, as opposed to just like fear is fear. Oh my gosh, we're scared. It's more like, oh no, I might die, versus like, okay, that person might be mad. Like, I can cope with that.
Yeah.
And that actually makes it on a psychological level. It helps your brain like understand different triggers as bigger or less. And that is really
amazing.
A great step.
Yeah, that's actually a good tip, because it's so true. We are afraid of so many things, but we put everything together, and there are so many different levels of fear and things that we can actually, if we look at it, we can actually work through it and resolve them. So yeah. Just talking to the person that is mad at us can resolve the situation.
Right. Instead of being like, oh my gosh, I'm scared and now I'm in an anxiety mode, and like then that just makes everything spiral out of control. Which, like, anxiety is just an emotion, and fears are, any emotion is just a frequency you're experiencing. Like, you're listening to a radio station. You can change it if you want, but sometimes it's hard. So starting to just identify what exactly you're feeling and why is like a huge step in really starting to like calm your energy down enough to feel safe enough to bring your gift out.
True. So amazing. So amazing. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for being on the show. This has been great. And I hope that for everybody watching and listening, that this episode has been helpful. Please do get in touch with Emily if you feel the need to bring your gift back, and if you feel there is something inside of you that is stuck there and you don't know how to let it out. There are professionals on this podcast. Emily is one of them. Reach out. All the details will be in the show notes, and for whoever is watching, you can find them also here below, but in the show notes you will find all of them. And if you like this episode, please do leave us some comments and some stars. And otherwise, I'll see you next week. Thank you so much, Emily.
You're so welcome. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Your mind is clearer than before. Your heart is full and wanting more. Your future's at the